Silk fabrics or synthetic fabrics? Which is the best? Well, let's look at the differences. The origins of silk date back many thousands of years, and people craved its delicate luxury feel. Synthetics are a relative newcomer and were invented in the last century and are admired for their durability, although I must admit, silk is also quite durable. Over the years, synthetics have come a long way towards replicating the hand and the drape of silk, and many people have a hard time telling the difference between the two. The stark differences lie in their properties, characteristics, cost and care. So after you learn the differences, you'll know which one you prefer to use. The first major difference between silk and synthetic fabrics is the fact that silk fabric comes from cocoons via the silkworm. Then it's spun and it's woven. This can be done by both machine or by hand. A single cocoon contains 300 to 1,500 yards of filament, and more than 20 cocoons are required just to create one fiber strand. These strands can then be combined in the spinning process and weaving to create a whole range of silk creations, including charmeuse, noil, raw silk, shantung, tussar, dupioni, the list goes on, each possessing its own texture and is used in all types of fine apparel. Synthetic fabrics are all manufactured by machine. All involve chemicals, especially petroleum-based ones, and the particular products created include nylon, polyester, acetates, acrylic, rayon, etc. Sometimes these are combined with natural products, but generally they are not, and they're used in all types of apparel and commercial applications. Just be aware, however, that synthetics are in fact chemical based. The second difference, we look at the characteristics of both silk and synthetic fabrics. You choose silk when the fabric is required to drape well and have a luxurious hand, how it feels when you touch it. The movement of silk creates static, but the fibers will not pill or form into little balls. Avoid exposure to excessive sunlight with silk because this can harm the actual fabric and the dye colors. Silk will absorb moisture. It is in fact surprisingly durable, and if it's organic in nature or has only had natural dyes applied rather than chemical dyes, then it's also totally chemical free. Silk by its very nature breathes, so it's ideal for all weather conditions. It's also biodegradable, which is great for our ecology, and it's eco-friendly, especially when it's handmade, hand-woven, using natural dyes. That's especially eco-friendly. Synthetics, on the other hand, any movement on synthetic fabric creates static, but the fibers will pill, unlike silk. Avoid exposure to gases because they are retained within the fabric itself from the way that they were created. There are chemicals involved, as we mentioned before, in synthetics. They are durable and they're good for warmth. However, they are not biodegradable. So unfortunately for our ecology, too much synthetics is not a good thing. The third difference to look at between silk and synthetic fabrics is the cost. The price of silk is higher than synthetics because its production has multiple steps. It's often labor intensive, especially if it's handmade and hand woven, and more than likely imported. Synthetics, on the other hand, are manufactured by large-scale machines, achieving the economies of scale that create lower costs. Sometimes synthetics are blended with silk to reduce costs again, and to give each fabric the beneficial characteristic of each other. Bear in mind, however, that synthetics are petroleum-based creations, and as petroleum prices increase, so will the cost of synthetics. Another important point to bear in mind is the relativity cost. The purchase of a silk scarf, for example, let's say it costs you $35 to $50. That will last you a lifetime. It may very well become a family heirloom, unlike the polyester or nylon scarf you may have purchased in the chain store. So the actual costs of your silk scarf should be taken into account over the amount of time you have to wear it and the enjoyment you have from doing so. The fourth and final difference between silk and synthetic fabrics is the care factor. There's quite a bit of confusion over this particular issue. But in general, silk fabrics are hydrophilic. They absorb water. They may shrink a little and they can wrinkle. And it's best to hand wash them in lukewarm to cold water. Always avoid piercing with a pin or a brooch because the hole will remain there permanently. And warm iron to make sure that you do not destroy the color within the silk itself. Synthetic fabrics, on the other hand, are hydrophobic. They actually repel water, but they also retain gases, odors, and stains. They will resist wrinkling more than silk, and you can machine wash them. And like silk, it's best to warm iron them to avoid melting the fabric. However, with Thai Silk Magic handmade silk, you will find that our fabrics do not shrink. They very rarely wrinkle, and you can throw them in the washing machine just like synthetic fabrics. They are extremely durable and very easy to take care of. So that brings us to the end of the differences between silk and synthetic fabrics. Which one do you choose? Well, of course, it's a matter of personal choice. All we're trying to do is make you aware of the consequences of your choice and the consequences of synthetics. Sure, they're cheaper, but there are also toxic chemicals involved and they're non-biodegradable. Silk, on the other hand, is safe, eco-friendly, healthy, and if it's handmade and hand-woven, it can also be sustainable. I wish you well in your selections, and I hope this was of some help to you.